I would like to welcome everyone to the Henry County Zoning Board meeting of Thursday, September 14th, 2017. This time, we're going to take care of some housekeeping items. This meeting is being televised live on Charter Channel 180 and AT&T UVerse Channel 99, and will rebroadcast daily at 1 o'clock p.m. and every Thursday at 7 o'clock p.m., and is available by video on demand on the county website. Now would be a good time to turn off your cell phones and whatever else is going to make some noise. If you wish to speak, you will need to fill out a public hearing speaker card. We allot 10 minutes for those to speak in favor of the case and 10 minutes for those in opposition of the case. For example, if 10 people wish to speak, they all share the 10-minute slot and so forth. Please address the board and not the audience when you come to speak. Those applicants presenting their case are counted as those speaking in favor of the case and share the 10-minute slot. At this time, Mr. Fretwell will lead us in the invocation and the pledge. Please stand.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, we'd like to thank you first for once again for another day that you've given us and all the many blessings that have already been ours today. We pray, dear Lord, that you would be with those that were affected by the hurricane, those that lost lives, and those that lost property. We pray, dear Lord, that you would help strengthen this board, give us the wisdom to make the decisions that would be pleasing to you, that would be better for the county, and would help the citizens of this county. All these things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, you may be seated. This meeting will now call to order. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the agenda.
I have a motion by Mr. Nelson. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Fretwell. Any discussion? All those in favor indicating by raising your hand. Motion carried. Do I have a motion to approve the July 13th and July 27th, 2017 minutes?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the July minutes.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the July minutes by Mr. Nelson. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Peterson. Any discussion? All those in favor indicating by raising your hand. Okay. And do I have any staff comments tonight?
Yes, Madam Chair. There are several cases that were advertised for tonight's meeting that have been postponed and withdrawn. Case number RZ 17-15 and case number COMP AM 1708 for High Brass Properties has been postponed. And case number RZ 17-16 and COMP AM 1709 for Georgia Reserve has also been postponed. And case number VR 17-16 for Will Lombard has been withdrawn. All of these requests have been by the applicant and/or staff, and case number VR 1716 is actually on your agenda tonight. So if you would just kindly just mark through it and mark it as withdrawn, we won't be hearing that case tonight.
Okay, thank you. All righty. At this time, we're going to move to the agenda items. If staff will please call the first case.
Case number ULDC-AM-17-09. An ordinance by Henry County, Georgia, to amend Chapter 3, Section 3.03.05, Land Development Requirements, Chapter 5, Section 5.03.05, Requirements in all zoning districts, Chapter 6, Section 6.01.01, Alternatives, Design Standards, and Chapter 12, Section 12.02.02, Requirements for Development Plans of the Henry County Unified Land Development Code. This ULDC text amendment is countywide and will be presented by Mr. Jeb Holder, and he is representing our Stormwater Department. And please forgive me, they have a new name now, so I will allow Mr. Jeb to state that name, and forgive me because I have not memorized it yet, but formerly known as Stormwater Department.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board.
Good evening.
It's my pleasure to be here tonight to present these proposed ordinance inclusions and amendments. Our new department name is the Stormwater Quality and Pollution Prevention Department, but hereafter referred to tonight as the Stormwater Department. We have several new proposed inclusions and amendments to be located in sections 3, 5, 6, and 12 of the Unified Land Development Code. This process was initiated by a state-required ordinance review and revision to incorporate amendments, if necessary, to the code that do not prohibit or impede the use of green infrastructure or low-impact development practices. What we did at the beginning of our review process was looked at other local surrounding municipalities to see what type of code amendments that they have implemented, and came up with a set, and based on other staff comments, a set of practices that would be best utilized here in Henry County. During that process, and in comparison to our surrounding neighboring counties that are also located in our district, we're a little different here in Henry County in that we still have a fair amount of land that has not been developed, particularly around our drinking water reservoirs. And so while we have that opportunity now to preserve and protect, we felt our best utilization of code and ordinance amendments would be to sort of take a different approach than what was recommended by our regulating agency. The purpose of green infrastructure and low-impact development practices are to mimic natural landscape features and functions in an area where those have been pretty much depleted. You have a lot of impervious surface, parking lots and buildings and things of that nature. While we still have opportunity to protect those areas and stay away from the problems that we're seeing, north of us, and in the higher, more urbanized, higher population counties. And I think you've all reviewed most of the, had a chance to review the proposed amendments, but if adopted, these amendments will greatly help us to preserve water quality, natural landscape features, preserve those, particularly, as you know, we're looking to expand our buffers, stream and wetland protective buffers, to help try to protect an area that is, at this moment, not really protected by our existing buffer ordinances, but it's an area next to the streams and wetlands. It's referred to as the hyporheic zone. It's a particularly interesting time to be here tonight discussing these with the storm that just came through. I don't know if you guys remember the flood back in 1994, which was from another hurricane that came through. But so many of these neighborhoods and developments, if they stay out of these areas that we're trying to protect, these low-lying areas where there's flood risk, it also requires less infrastructure and stormwater drainage, pipes, ditches, head walls, culverts, and those types of things that also require maintenance and upkeep and replacement and cost to the county. So if y'all have any questions, probably may be a good time for you to go ahead and ask that. Mr. Risher asked earlier if I could prepare some maps, and I've brought some of those, and I'll go ahead and set those up to kind of show you all where the drinking water reservoirs are, where their critically protected buffers and areas are, and some of these show So this is a map of the county. I don't know if you can see all of the red lines. Those are the streams that are listed as impaired by EPD. We have to monitor those and incorporate additional protective measures in those watersheds. All of the sort of pinkish-looking dots on the map. So those are all septic systems in the county. So as you can see, there's many of those. Thank you, Stacy. That's better. Okay, now north is up. So as you can see, there are many septic systems in the county. We are expected to increase in population greatly over the next 15 to 20 years. And so as we, become more constrained with our available land, we see it as a good time to go ahead and implement some of these practices to help preserve these drinking water sources. The drinking water resources operated by the Henry County Water Authority are all located along the southern portion of the county, which is also where we're expected to see the most future development, as that's where the most applicable land availability is. And those are our lifeblood. Without clean water, things get bad. So, including additional associated costs for land development, taxes, and things of that nature. Lake Allatoona and Lake Lanier, if you're familiar with those are drinking water reservoirs for some of our neighboring counties, municipalities in our district. And both of those lakes are reported to be anywhere from 75 to 85% full of sediment. Most people don't think of sediment as a major pollutant, but a large majority, obviously, of those water bodies has been incapacitated by sediment. And they're going to have some tough decisions in the future about how to, and now about how to address that. Very expensive, obviously, to clean all of that out of a reservoir. And the best way to keep that from happening is to expand our protective measures and our buffers, wetlands, keep those as functioning natural systems and restore them where we can. And that is the backbone and the purpose for these proposed amendments. And so this map, if you see the lighter gray shaded areas, particularly in the southern portion of the county and then one sort of in the central western portion of the county, those are all of the drinking water reservoir watersheds or drainage basins in the county. And the orange areas down in the southern portion of the county, those are the critical watershed areas for our county unincorporated drinking water reservoirs, which already have heavier and more extensive development requirements. And our intent is to try to add to those protective measures, and also all of these amendments would be proposed for countywide unincorporated, so they would extend throughout the county. Fortunately, I had some of these maps made back in 2014, and the data on this map actually is from 2014. All of the green dots are work orders that the Stormwater Department has conducted in the county, where we fixed head walls or culverts or drainage issues. As you can see, it's extensive and it's very expensive to conduct those type of projects, including a lot of other issues. So another intended goal of these amendments and inclusions to the ordinance would be to require less stormwater infrastructure, less maintenance, and less replacement in the future. So, back at the office, I have a fair amount of examples that I could bring and show you tonight regarding some of the issues that I'm speaking about, but those involve people's homes, people's properties. So I just wanted to kind of try to sketch an example of what some of these amendments would address. This is intended to look like a subdivision property with the property divided up into several parcels with a roadway and a cul-de-sac. And the blue line can either be a stream or a drainage ditch, drainage path, engineered or natural. And this particularly speaks to our proposed ordinance amendment about master drainage plans and disallowing in the future the fragmented approach to a neighborhood development. If the gray house and driveway that is depicted on the map existed when the property to the right was proposed to be developed, and they began the process of either clearing the property or filling or cutting and fill. Oftentimes we would run into situations where water drainage from one property leads to the neighboring parcel, and in order to address that drainage issue, they would bring in fill dirt and raise that property up several feet, which would then back the water up on the property from which the water is trying to escape, or push it onto another adjacent property. Oftentimes it would back up that water or hold it in place where it would affect or impact septic systems. Also, that is, again, additional infrastructure that is required to drain those properties sufficiently, that is engineered, man-made, requires maintenance for it to continue to operate in the future. And if that were to become clogged or didn't receive proper maintenance over the years, and then you have a hurricane or Irma or something of that nature come through, it leads to some major problems. So I feel kind of like I'm running in circles here. I think it's probably a good time for me to address any questions that you may have.
Okay, any comments from the board for the staff that's presented? Mr. Richard, sorry.
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation and also for the maps that you prepared. I think that they really, tell the story. 20 years ago, most of the growth in Henry County was around Stockbridge and Fairview and McDonough, kind of the central part of the county. But as we've attracted more industry and of course more subdivisions, the growth is going, southward or south central, and it's getting into the territory where we have these watershed protection areas set up and are very critical areas. So I'm glad to see that you are coming up with some ordinance changes that really kind of builds upon the watershed protection ordinance or territories that we've set up in the past. But I very much support this ordinance and these changes, and I hope my fellow board members will feel the same way.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I do have one question. I know that originally it was advertised, the changes that were on the website, but since then we've had some changes. Should he put those up there so we'll know what we're voting on?
Yes, he can.
So we're not voting on what was originally posted, but we're voting on the amendments.
You're voting on the updated revisions that Mr. Holder will place on the overhead, and then those revisions will be taken to the Board of Commissioners for final vote.
Okay.
So these are the first two of three proposed revisions included today based on some very important, informative comments that needed to be addressed. So the first one is in the blue highlighted area. This is a previously, this part of the Unified Land Development Code, we did not previously propose amendments to this section, but as it relates to number 3 of section 30305, just to kind of form continuity, we propose to amend this section. But essentially what it is establishing language that agrees with state and federal agencies in our neighboring counties and municipalities, environmental consultants, environmental engineers, terms that they are used to using for permits, necessary and related associated permits. So it's just and in some cases, previously it listed that we would measure our buffer from the top of the stream bank, and in some areas that's just not easily identifiable. In some cases, they're not essentially there. So this gives us another point from which we can measure our protective buffers. The point of rested vegetation is the definition term that Georgia EPD uses for their state buffer measurements, and the ordinary high water mark is the term that the Corps of Engineers uses for defining their jurisdiction. And that's just the same proposed amendment in number 3 of this section. Same language.
I just have a question. So if, back to that, if you're measuring at the top of the stream and in the point of rested vegetation is below that, would they, would the rested, point of rested vegetation, would that take precedent on any of, even though it says at the top of the stream, would the point of, because it says if it can't be defined, but if you could define the top of the stream and there's a point of rested vegetation below that, which one would be what they use?
I think
Which point?
we'll go with the whichever is farthest from the center line of the stream, which in most cases would be the top of the bank where identifiable. That would, usually would be an extra 5 feet or so on the protective buffer. The top of bank generally is an area that, where identifiable, it remains fairly permanent, whereas the point of rested vegetation can fluctuate throughout the year based on groundwater charge, rainfall, seasonal plant growth, things of that nature. So.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Good question.
Oh, Mr. Richard.
Yes, I have one more question, and I guess it deals with processes of the, county departments that are involved with development. Is this going to follow the same procedure that's set up by the plan review department, or is this going to be a separate, plan review that's administered by your department?
This will be probably handled closely to some other responsibilities, I guess, that our office holds with floodplain assessments and making sure developments are out of the floodway, or if they require flood no-rise certificates and things of that nature. The review of the state and federal permits that will be required will come through our office, along with the reports of delineations, and that is an effort to make sure that it will help reduce the permitted and non-permitted impacts to our aquatic resources. And also there are a lot of requirements that are in state and federal permits under the auspices of their programs that we don't necessarily enforce in Henry County, but they are state and federal law, And this will help us make sure that development in this county is following state and federal law.
Okay, what about the actual development permits and building permits? Would that still be done through the building and plan review?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And did you have one more that you wanted to present? The
Yeah.
six, okay.
Yeah, one more. Thank you for the reminder. There was one other inclusion that we added today. This would, for those cases where projects where it's not easily identifiable who the responsible party is for making sure that they are in compliance on site, or that is in charge of who, may have done this or that and made this or that mistake, we run into that from time to time. So this was just an effort to add some additional language to be sort of all-encompassing, to make sure there are no loopholes for parties to claim negligence, I guess, or claim that they didn't understand the ordinance or didn't know that we had these specific rules in place and that sort of thing. So it is highlighted here in the green text. It's just 2 lines there. So we just added, it is the responsibility of the property owner, developer, contractor, agent, operator, or any of those who are responsible for the day-to-day operational control of the project plans and specifications to ensure compliance.
Okay, thank you. Do any other staff members have any questions for Mr. Holder? Okay, thank you so very much. Appreciate the presentation.
Thank you all.
At this time, we're going to see if the public has any comments, anybody that wants to come and speak in favor of the text amendments. Okay, I don't see a mad rush coming up. Anybody want to speak in opposition of the text amendments? Okay, so if I can go ahead and have staff call the case.
Case number ULDC-AM-17-09, an ordinance by Henry County, Georgia to amend Chapter 3, Section 3.03.05, Land Development Requirements, Chapter 5, Section 5.03.05, Requirements in all zoning districts, Chapter 6, Section 6.01.01, Alternative Design Standards, and Chapter 12, Section 12.02.02, Requirements for development plans of the Henry County Unified Land Development Code. This text amendment is applicable countywide and was presented by Mr. Jeb Holder, representing the Henry County Stormwater Quality and Pollution Prevention Department.
Do I have a motion for this case?
Madam
Mr. Peterson?
Chair, I move that we approve the text amendment request for ULDC-AM-17-09 in accordance with staff recommendations and noted revisions.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Peterson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Risher, I have a second by Mr. Risher. Any discussion? All those in favor indicating by raising your hand. Motion carried. All right, please call the next case.
It's as he presented it, right?
Case number CU-17-04, Janet Crumbly Road of Anderson, South Carolina, requests a conditional use for a property located on East Lake Road in land lot 23 of the 7th District. The property consists of 16.48 plus or minus acres, and the request is to build a church. This case is located in Commission District 3 and will be presented by Ms. Julie Yoder, Planner 1.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Board.
Good evening.
The conditional use case before you this evening is for a property located on East Lake Road near the intersection of Airline Road, and the request is for a religious facility. The 16.48 plus or minus acre property is currently vacant and zoned RA residential agricultural and is located within the Highway Corridor Overlay District. Religious facilities are permitted in the RA zoning district, meeting all development standards with an approved conditional use. According to the site plan submitted, the development standards for a religious facility would be met. However, it's unknown what the building materials will consist of. With that said, staff recommends approval of the request with the following conditions that I will place on the overhead. And I'd be happy to take any questions you have.
Okay, do any of the board members have any questions for staff?
Not at this time.
Okay, not at this time, all right. If we could please call the applicant, if you could come forward, the applicant to please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Gary Anderson, 6125 Montlake Avenue, McDonough, Georgia. Good evening,
Good evening.
Madam Chair. and
Do you have
board.
anything you would like to add to staff's comments?
I don't know if everyone is familiar with the location of just wanted to point this out. Thank you. The land, the 16.4 acres that we are purchasing is directly across from Henry County Water's property, where the two water tanks are shown there. We have I am representing the seller, Janet Rowe, and the buyer also, Trinity Chapel South. We have a contingency in the contract contingent on conditional use permit being issued. And we are purchasing the 16.4 acres from Janet Crumley Rowe. We have approval from the Henry County Environmental Health Department. We did have soil tests run on that. We also have approval from the Henry County Water Department that we have access to water there. And I did meet with David Simmons from the Henry County DOT to look at the site distance that we had there in front of the property.
Okay, anything else?
No, that would cover it.
Okay, do any of the board members have any questions for the applicant? I don't hear any. You may be seated.
Okay, thank you.
At this time, we're going to call those who want to speak, and we've got about 7 minutes to speak in favor of the case. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Justin Harley, and I'm the senior pastor at the church. My address is 635 McGarity Drive, McDonough, Georgia. We have a great group of people at our church. We're meeting currently in Eagles East shopping complex, which obviously is a temporary place for us. We've been seeking over the past year for a permanent location to be able to worship together. We have about 270 people on Sundays, average attendance, with a membership of a little bit over 300. I'm very thankful to be serving as a pastor of the church. We're very diverse in many ways. One way, from an age perspective, we have a very strong group of senior adults, many people even in their 70s and 80s, but we also have a lot of young people as well, a lot of children, a lot of teenagers, and a lot of middle-aged families. We're also diverse ethnically. We have just an ethnically diverse congregation, people worshiping together there, and we're very active in this community as well. Over the past close to 3 years, where we've been meeting there in Eagles East, we have been doing our very best to serve our community. We partner with the Henry Pregnancy Resource Center, We provide resources to them. Also Haven House, where we serve there. We provide resources, events for them, and a friend's house as well, which are both shelters for battered women and children. So we're active in the community, and we're also, our children's pastor is the area coordinator for all of Henry County for the Good News Club, which is a Christian-based after-school program that provides free child care for parents who need that after school. We've been, like I said, we've been seeking for a permanent place to worship and meet, and Mr. Gary Anderson has been helping us with that, and so we seek to purchase the property so that we can have a permanent home and relocate from Eagles East.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak in favor of the case?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am Peter Grant from 747 White Dove Drive, McDonough, 30253. Ladies and gentlemen, I am a member of this church that is applying this evening, and I want to speak to the fact that as a group, we offer a benefit to the community that should make it easy for how the vote goes tonight. I hail all the way from Jamaica in the West Indies, and I have been living in Henry County now for 15 years. Now, when I go to church on Sunday morning, there are, as Pastor Justin just mentioned, we have a diverse group of people. So you go in and there are different shades and cultures. But when you get in to our sanctuary on a Sunday morning, hailing all the way from Jamaica, I can tell you that I never, ever see diversity. I don't see color. I get in there and I see family. Because that is what we have been. We have been one big, or not so big, but a happy family, working to reach this community, working to help this community. And I think this speaks volumes to what we can do as we seek to relocate to a permanent location. We seek to be a benefit. We have been a benefit. We seek to continue to do so. And all those around will be able to enjoy that if they desire to be a part of what we're doing. Because, as I said, coming in, one will not be made to feel that you're different, but that you belong, because that is the way I feel. I serve as a member of the Elder Board. Now think about that, coming, as I said, all the way from the West Indies, but here I am, a part of his family. And so I trust this evening that you will be able to see the benefit that we offer and that you will vote in favor. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to come and speak in favor? You have about 2 minutes, 46 seconds. Would you like to come and speak in favor, sir? You'll have to come up to the microphone, please, and state your name and address for the record. You can do it afterwards. Just go ahead and state your name and address for the record and speak into the mic.
I'm Jimmy Gay, and we live over at 247 East Knight Road, which is our back door neighbor over there. And all I'd like to say is, what better neighbor could we have? Looking forward to it.
Okay, thank you. You may be seated. Go ahead and fill out a speaker card and turn it in. You can do it afterwards, I guess. The officer will help you do that. Anyone else want to speak in favor? Okay, I don't see anyone coming up. All right, so at this time, we'll ask if there anyone wants to speak in opposition of the case. Okay, I don't see anyone coming up. Do the board members have any other questions for staff or the applicant at this time? All righty, I'm looking around, I don't see anybody. All right, let's go ahead and call the case.
Case number CU-17-04, Janet Crumbley Rowe of Anderson, South Carolina, requests a conditional use for a property located on East Lake Road in land lot 23 of the 7th District. The property consists of 16.48 plus or minus acres, and the request is to build a church. The property is located in Commission District 3 and was presented by Mrs. Julie Yoder, Planner 1.
Do you have a motion for this case? Mr. Risher.
Yes, I make a motion to approve the conditional use with the 3 recommendations indicated in the staff report.
I have a motion for approval by Mr. Risher. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Fretwell. Any discussion? All those in favor indicating by raising your hand. Motion carried. Okay, thank you. Next case, please.
RZ 1713H, Brett Holdings of Fayetteville, Georgia, requests a rezoning from R2 Urban Residential Conservation Subdivision to R2 Urban Residential and R3 High Density for property located at 46 West King Road in land lot 114 of the 3rd District. The property consists of 36.220 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a residential subdivision. This is the city of Hampton, and the report is presented by Julie Yoder, Planner 1.
Good evening again.
Good evening.
The rezoning case before you this evening is for the property located at 46 West King Road within the city of Hampton and is located within the Watershed Protection District. The request is to change the zoning from an R2 conservation subdivision to an R2 and R3 cluster home development. The property was rezoned in 2006 to R2 with conditions, one of which approving a conditional use for a conservation subdivision contingent on the approval of the concept plan. Those conditions can be found in your staff report on page 2. The intent of this rezoning is to create an R2 and R3 zone cluster home development for the purpose of a single-family subdivision. The property consists of 36.22 plus or minus acres and would contain 60 residential lots. The future land use designation for this property is medium density residential, which permits a net density of 2.0 to 3.6 dwelling units per acre, and this development would have a net density of 2.07 dwelling units per acre. Also, the subdivisions in the surrounding area have similar densities and/or zonings, specifically Cobblestone Ridge to the east, which you see in pink or purple there. And due to the consistency of the surrounding area, as well as the support of the future land use map, staff recommends approval of the requested rezoning with the following conditions that I will place on the overhead now. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Do any of the board members have any questions for staff? Yes. Mr. Holder. Bailey, sorry.
I noted, I spoke with you earlier about this, but the size of the lots vary a good bit, especially in the R3 area, from something maybe 8,000 up to, I think you said 17, 18,000.
Yeah, around there. Mm-hmm.
Can you explain why you can have lot sizes like that in this particular area?
A cluster home development is allowed to have the varying lot sizes. I think with an average being 12,000 square feet.
It can have variable.
Varying, mm-hmm. So some can be smaller than 12,000
So
square feet.
there's no minimum?
I'm not aware that there's a minimum.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I noted open space, a lot of open space here for the R2 requirement and for the R3, I guess R3 requirement. But no planned use for those open spaces other than, I think, well, detention pond falls in one. And the other one is, I think, pretty wooded.
Mm-hmm. No use, it's just open space at this time. And I can place the site plan on here for everyone. That might make it a little easier. It's sort of hard to see. Everything in blue is open space. The pinkish purple is R3, and then the orange is R2.
I guess I need advice here. Requirements for activity areas. Got a lot of people, I think it's specified like a concrete about 150 students out of this area. That's a lot of kids. Look like they need a place for recreation. There's nothing real close unless they go down to the city of Hampton, but there's no way to get there, other than being transported by car. But daily routine, what kind of activities can they have? That's what's bothered me about this site is
This is going to be a playground right here. That's all that will be. And they, of course, are not required to provide other amenities. As a conservation subdivision, they would have been, but in this case, they will not be. So, I mean, if there is something you would like to see, you could condition that. I'm not sure what you could build in those areas, being in the watershed protection district and having a detention pond in the other property. That might come out more during the plan review phase.
Can the plan review phase add items, or does that have to be added here?
No, it would have to be conditioned.
Okay, come in here. Another question. Maintenance of the playground, of the open areas, such, where's that fall on? Who's that fall on?
I'm not aware that anyone has claimed
Plain?
to maintain that, but that would be a good question for the applicant when they come up.
Okay.
Mr. Bailey, if I could chime in really quick. The maintenance of a playground or open space or any type of area like that can be conditioned to be a function of the HOA if there's an established HOA.
But there's no HOA specified for this?
To my knowledge,
Not
no.
at this time.
Not now, okay. I think it's got me for a little while.
Anyone else have any questions for staff?
Can you go back to the list?
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Peterson?
Was that an add-on? Because from my notes, I only see 6. Maybe I missed a page or something.
Your report may have
In-
a page out of order.
Oh, okay.
And it may have been how it was scanned or printed, but there is a number 7. I had to
Okay.
look for it in my book.
Okay, very good, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, only had 6. I have a question. Mr. Peterson, was that all you had? Okay, so, the conditions that were, listed under the zoning history, would those conditions go away, or do they follow the property?
Unless you recondition them onto this property, they would go away. If you chose to add them, you could do that.
Because in this, there is a condition for covenants, codes, and restrictions for the subdivision that provides for the upkeep and maintenance of all open space and recreational amenities. So I just didn't know if you saw that, Mr. Bailey. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bullet points down. I didn't know if if that was some extra language that you wanted to condition back.
Yeah. Not sure. I'd rather look at through, homeowner association. I'm not fully understanding the requirements of that
Okay.
provision.
I guess my question would be, how could you have covenants and codes without a
Without-
homeowners association?
That's a correct statement. It's just saying that, I guess they would be, for the, shall provide for permanent upkeep, so, but I don't see in here in this condition that it has an HOA, unless I'm missing it.
Do not the covenants and codes have to be drawn up ahead of time and approved by Henry County to make sure they match our code?
They have to be filed with the county. Usually that's filed with the clerk of Superior Court, but those covenants are drawn up by whomever at the time, if it's the developer or whomever the property owner is. But usually what happens is they file those covenants with the county. We do not review those covenants. We don't enforce HOA covenants. It would only come through our review if it was an enforceable act by the county, and we cannot enforce HOA covenants. that in its context is a civil matter.
I guess what I'm thinking about is our covenants were filed with the clerk of Henry County. That was probably what I was thinking about.
And they're usually filed with the final plat of the subdivision.
Right.
And hopefully in most cases, I say hopefully because there are occasions where there aren't copies of the HOA covenants, but we do diligently strive to make sure that there is a copy of those filed with whatever final plat that's filed with the county. But it's not guaranteed that we have HOA covenants.
Okay, so, and there was a conditional use permit, I guess, that was, part of the zoning prior to zoning and had some conditions on it. So would that conditional use, does that not follow this, or does this?
It would. A change in this zoning will change it from a conservation subdivision to what they're requesting here. I believe part of these conditions was making it the conservation subdivision per the approval of a concept plan. And so if you do not re-include that condition, then that will not apply any longer.
Okay. Any other questions from board members to staff? Mr. Risher, you don't like you?
No, it's not for the applicant when they come up.
Oh, you have some, okay, all right. So if there are no other questions for staff, we'll go ahead and call the applicant. Please come forward. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Richard Ferry. I work with Brent Holdings at 270 North Jeff Davis in the city of Fayetteville. Thank you, Madam Chairman and Board for having me here today. To answer a few of your questions, first of all, regarding the covenants and the HOA, we are absolutely going to have an HOA and covenants. We have found that over all of our developments, the covenants and the HOA are extremely important in maintaining the property values. In neighborhoods that lack HOAs, we have found that HOAs and covenants, we have found that property values decrease. The HOA will be there to maintain that. That is something we will require, and if it needs to be a condition by the board, feel free to do that. We will absolutely have those covenants in there. And we will, as was pointed out, they are required to be filed with the clerk of the court, and they will be filed there. And they'll protect not only the amenities that are being proposed in the playground area, but also they'll be the owners of that open space so that they can guarantee that that open space stays as open space and that it's used for the purpose of the water recharge and the water quality in the neighborhood. And that's really when you look at that open space and you really look at it, a lot of it is along that creek. It's important to maintain that creek. And really, when we started talking with staff, with city staff, and then we moved to county and city joint meetings, that was one of the questions that we need to maintain, is finding out what it meant to be part of the watershed protection district of that creek or of that district. So we found out more of it. We had to add the buffers back in. They were required along the creek, and those are some of the things that the HOA will do. And so if the board decides to keep that as a condition, or whether you don't, we're going to do it anyway. We want an HOA in here, and we want them to have protective covenants, not only to maintain the open space, but to maintain the property values inside the subdivision. Secondly, when it comes to the recreational uses, we penciled in a playground. That's really what we're desiring to do here. When we look at a 60-home subdivision, the ability to maintain the amenities that are being proposed is extremely difficult. 60 homes is relatively a small number of homes inside that subdivision. The amenities need to be practical for the subdivision, but they also need to be able to maintain those amenities. And so we're proposing a playground in there. Also, right at that entrance, we're required to have those central mailbox units. It'll be right at that entrance. We propose some parking in there to provide parking not only for the amenities, but for the central mailbox area. I did want to point out, while we still have time, about item number 7 of the conditions. what item number 7 says is that the developer shall realign the intersection of East King Road with West King Road to comply with all access standards. What I believe that means, and I called Mark Whitley, the city engineer, and I also called the director of public works to help explain that. So what we believe it means is bringing East King Road in at a 90-degree angle to meet GDOT standards. If I'm wrong about this, I'll definitely talk to the city engineer, and we'll negotiate it through the city council. But what we were looking at there is when this project was first proposed in 2006, we looked at the requirements on there. The realignment of East King Road was not on there. And so we're reducing the impact from 60 to 74, from 74 to 60 units. And we think that requirement is unusual for a property that's being decreased in its density. As was reported by staff, this was originally proposed for 74 units. We're proposing 60. And to make a road realignment a requirement of that zoning, we find it to be a little bit difficult to comply with.
Okay, did any of the board members have any questions for the applicant? Mr. Risher?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. Will the subdivision be built all at one time, or will it be built in phases?
That's a good question. When we look at takedown schedules, or what you're looking at and talking about, we tend to look at a reasonable number that can be absorbed not only for the construction of the development, but also for the construction of the homes, so that we're not sitting on all the lots during that entire time. My guess on a 60-home subdivision, it would be in 2 phases. One being the road to the road to the initial cul-de-sac, and then the second one being the second cul-de-sac.
And secondly, would you agree to build the playground area as part of the first phase?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question, and it's an interesting way of looking at it. Amenities are important for the use of the homeowner, but they're also important to attract the homeowners in. Keeping that area not only very kid-friendly, which is the goal of it, but to keep it attractive in that first phase, where we have the homes don't start for a couple hundred feet off the road. I think it's going to be a big attraction for the subdivision.
Okay, and where would you put the central mailbox area?
If you allow me to. Yeah. It's right there at where you see the parking facility. We put in, I think, 7 parking spots to accommodate not only the central parking unit or central mailbox unit, but also provide a little bit of parking to the amenities area. Honestly, for 60 homes, I think more reasonably, it'd be nice for those people to get out and walk to the amenities, but there'll be some people who can't, and this will accommodate that.
Okay, that's all I have for now.
Mr. Bailey?
Looking at this, you have the 2 cul-de-sacs. What was the reason you didn't tie that together?
It's important that we allow water to drain out from here, and as you can see, this turns into a watershed area. In fact, the creek begins here, and as we learned from the earlier description from the staff member who works with stormwater, the less you impact those areas, the better off you'll be. Our goal is to stay completely out of them. You could through the Corps of Engineers, but to what end? The purpose of it would not be to satisfy a interconnection of a city. It would just be to provide an interconnection of these 2 neighborhood roads over a culvert when the goal of the conservation of that open space is to preserve the areas around the creek. This would just impact the area around the creek.
Well, I look from the aspect of you streets. You have no way to get anybody in and out past the area of fire. The street's blocked, and emergencies, people trying to get out.
I completely understand your position. Absolutely, it's something we have the wider streets in here. They're standard city streets in here. They're not the narrow ones that are originally proposed. So this is it provides a little bit better circulation for those type of events.
What about recreational areas? You thought about other places you might could.
We just discussed the playground here. The goal was to provide something that the HOA could maintain. We found as the amenities grow, the neighborhood needs to grow with it. And this neighborhood being 36 acres with 16 protected, it doesn't allow for much more space. We could put walking trails through the open space if that's a desire. That would be something we could do. And we have, which is unusual for a neighborhood like this. Typically, you'd put your access between two lots. In this case, we have the ability to access that through the end of these cul-de-sacs, and it might be something we could do. Yes, sir.
Any other board members have any questions for applicant at this time? Okay, you may be seated. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So anyone else want to come and speak in favor of the case? Okay, I don't see anyone coming up. Anyone want to come and speak in opposition of the case? Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is, thank you all for hearing me. My name is Kenneth Epperson. I live at 325 Floyd Road. Also, my parents own the property beside me. They cannot be here due to health reasons. I would like to represent them also, which is Kenneth Epperson and Willa Jo Epperson. My sister, which lives on property adjacent to mine, which is having problems with vertigo and cannot be here tonight. I would also like to speak on her behalf. The properties are 325, 273 Floyd Road, and 271 Floyd Road. What I would like to say is the amount of traffic that we're starting to receive in that area is starting to increase. We have lived there since 1994. We're on basically 40 acres combined. We have tried to be as low impact on that property as we can because we understood we were in a watershed area. Matter of fact, we have creeks that run behind all of our property that's adjacent, and we've tried to be good stewards of that land. So we've tried not to remove trees, impact wildlife, keep it as natural as we could. Excuse me, I'm not used to talking in front of people, so I'm a little nervous. But we feel that this planned subdivision will heavily impact that area, will also impact us financially to our value of our homes. So with that said, I'm in opposition of it, and I would ask this council to be in opposition too. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak in opposition of the case? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Don and Dell Landis, 58 West King Road. This property right here, that's our property in the corner there. We moved there 30 years ago. It was very rural at that time. And with the building of the 300 lots across the street from us on that property there, and now we're going to be sandwiched in between that and a high density on the other side. And it's definitely going to impact our property and the value of it. One thing I noticed on the plat, it's not up here now, but there was originally, I was on the zoning board in Hampton when this was passed originally, and there was a 50-foot buffer on the west side of my property to the building lines and everything there. I see that that has been done away with, so this property just runs right up against there. When they graded that property, they intruded into that within about 10 feet of my property and dug it out. And we told the city about it. The city had them fill it back in. They were not supposed to clear cut the property, which they did. When they were grading, the grading contractors, people came over on our property and built fires and used the bathroom on our property and so forth. The oil that's used in their equipment, they dumped cans of oil that we had to go clean up later on our property. I certainly hope if anything's built there, we wouldn't have that kind of situation again. And again, as it was addressed,
You need to speak with us. Don't turn your back to us.
I was just gonna point to the fellow that was up here.
That's okay.
Previously.
You just, yeah.
I can't.
No, that's okay. I just don't want you to turn your back to us.
And he mentioned the road condition. The road is deteriorating rapidly and is in really need of repair. The edges of it are just falling off and spider webbing everywhere. And so we would hope that you would consider that. I know there's the developer mentioned he wants to do some things that maintain the value of the property there, but he's not doing anything to maintain our value of our property. At least we would ask if there would be some kind of privacy fence put up there between our property and theirs. They were going to encroach all the way into that 50-foot buffer zone that was there before. We would certainly appreciate something like that. Our house has been there, was built in 1868, and so it's been there nearly 150 years now. And it is a historical property. We've tried to maintain it in that character. So we'd like those things taken into consideration. So.
Okay, I just would like to say that we realize that progress comes, if you want to call this progress, and we know that somebody eventually is going to build there, but cluster homes is not the answer for this particular area. We've got enough traffic in the area, and especially since the fact that this is going to completely border our property on one side and completely across the back. And we do have historic property. We moved there because it was historic property. We moved there because everybody in the area had acreage. It was a quiet area, and it's not now with the 300-plus houses right across the street. And so we just strongly oppose putting this many houses to our side and to our back, and please ask that you take all this into consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak in opposition of the case? Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Larry Rucker. I live at 15 Lake Vista Circle in Lake Hampton subdivision. I'm the president of the Lake Hampton Homeowners Association. Our lake borders this property. That straight line you see right there is our dam. This property is adjacent to that. The previous developer back in '06, I guess, had agreed to do certain things that would ensure that our private lake remained private, including putting a fence to block access from that area to our lake. Our lake is owned by the 11 homeowners on the lake. There's no public access to it. It's a private lake. Only the lake owners have access to the lake. We don't even allow the homeowners to fish from the dam. So I'm very much concerned with how this development is going to impact our lake and our subdivision and our dam. There were several other things. I don't recall in detail the previous developer. There were several things he agreed to do, including the fence, but to ensure that it did not encroach. I don't remember the density. I think the developer indicated that he's putting less homes than the previous one. I don't know about that. It seemed like an awful lot of houses to be put on this piece of property in this particular location, just from my opinion. But I would hope that you would consider how it impacts our lake and our subdivision. There's also a pump station. I don't know if anybody's talked about that. There's a pump station right there on the lower side of the dam. I don't know how that's affected, and a road that goes to it. I haven't seen this until tonight, so I don't really know all the details. But I appreciate your consideration and allow me to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak in opposition of the case? Please come and state your name and address for the record.
James Johnson, 271 Floyd Road, on the same property as 325 Floyd Road and 273 Floyd Road. Thank you for hearing me. Thank you for hearing all of this. As stated before, Floyd Road is a small two-lane road, very small. It's crumbling. When they put cobblestone in, or whatever the name of the subdivision is, it added so much more traffic. The main concern is the traffic that's coming down that road. I understand he's cut it from 74 to 60 homes, which is potentially anywhere from 60 to 100 more vehicles. That's just in the subdivision. Then you add more school bus traffic, not to mention the intersection of East King and Highway 20. It's unbearable sometimes just to try to cross that if you're going into Hampton, much less all the other added traffic that's coming. It's just a big impact on that road. The road just simply, the structure can't handle that much more traffic. However, they decide to, cut the road, cut East King and West King and put them together, whatever. But it's just too much traffic, and it won't handle it. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. We have about 30 seconds for anybody else want to speak in opposition of the case. You have to come up and state your name and address for the record. And you have 30 seconds.
Don Landis, 58 West King Road. On the west side of my property, there's also a very low area where the water shut off of my property runs. And when the previous developer went in there and graded that, he blocked that water flow. So when it rains, there's a big pond there that forms. And that's really illegal to block the flow off of somebody else's property. And I would hope the developer would take that into consideration if you pass this. He'd rectify that and open that up so the water can flow off my property freely.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're out of time, so I'm going to ask the board members if they have any questions for the applicant, if I need to bring him back up here.
Yeah.
You just want the staff?
I have a question for the applicant.
Okay, so I'd like to go ahead and ask the applicant to please come forward. So we'll have questions for the applicant and then staff too, if anyone has any at this time. So, Mr. Nelson, you have questions for the applicant?
Yes, you've heard some of the concerns of your neighbors there. Do you plan to address any of these issues in terms of where we are now with this?
Well, what I heard, a couple of the items that I heard, the traffic increasing. As it's currently zoned, there's 74 lots. I think staff will agree that was what it was currently zoned for. We're proposing 60, which is a decrease in the number that's currently there. So I think that the traffic count would drop compared to what's currently zoned, although I understand it, and it does sound like a terribly bad situation that initially started back in 2006 with the zoning. I understand that from what was said that the previous developer may not have followed some of the regulations that were out there. That's very difficult to do now. We've found that going out and being a good developer and being a neighbor to these people is a better way of doing it. I did see the part that Mr. Landis brought up, and it was something that we're going to have to address. I can see an area in here where if you look at where my arrow is, coming off of his property onto the project property, you can see that that's exactly what he's talking about. It looks like a flattened area that over time probably silted up. And I agree with him. That probably should never have happened. But in 2006, it did. We would have to find a way to get that water through, whether it's between two lots. We'd find a way to work with that one through Mr. Landis. The issue along the back property line, I think we could accommodate some privacy through there, whether maybe not a privacy fence. What about planting of something more opaque would be a better way of addressing that than a privacy fence that needs to be maintained, where a good planting of magnolias and evergreens or even Leland cypress seem to work very good in that fashion, but it would provide that privacy and it would provide something that's far more sustainable than a privacy fence. But that would be something we'd be happy to discuss when we look at this, at these projects. The issue of the fact that this will bring more traffic than there is currently today is absolutely, it is the case. However, I want hopefully the commission understands that as it's currently zoned is for 74 lots, we're bringing in less than that. And so we think we're actually impacting less than what is being
Okay, and that was
originally proposed.
that was some concern in terms of the lake. Will your property interfere with the lake at all?
I was trying to look at, I'm sorry, you won't be able to see it if I move it. Is the lake this one or that one? Yes. The larger lake? The one that's across the creek from our property through the wetlands and the buffer? I'm not sure. Our goal, of course, is to never impact a lake or a stream. I think we would stay completely out of that area. I'm not sure exactly how we could force future residents when we're gone to stay out of there. But I think that I like the idea of putting up, obviously, no trespassing signs. Obviously, they need to be known that that's not their property and not to use it. I'm not exactly sure how to do that, though. I understand the impact of what it is, that if they're not allowed to fish on it, no one should be allowed to fish on it, and that would be something that that we would love to be able to enforce. I just don't know how through the development process. I think the creek, the wetlands, and all the other items are far more significant than a fence would be through there. Yes.
Any other board members have any questions for the applicant? All right, you may be seated.
Thank you.
Okay, any other board members have any questions for staff?
Just quick, for the public's information, the zoning right now is R2 conservation subdivision, right? And you can have, 2 units per acre, would provide something around 70-something houses that could be built right now there without.
Well, that was based on the approval of a concept plan, which I don't believe has been approved or maybe even submitted. And that was all through the city.
Right.
So at this moment, I'm not sure that it could be developed as a conservation subdivision.
Okay. But as an R2, it could be built to.
It is zoned residentially, R2, so you can develop it
70 houses.
as a residential subdivision as is.
Right, right. Okay, that's all. Thanks, Judy.
Based on that, I do have one quick question, based on Mr. Bailey's question. As of right now, how many homes can you actually build on that property the way it's zoned today?
I believe in the city of Hampton, unless you have something to add, Stacy.
Right. Mr. Nelson, if you'll look at your staff report, page 2, and it's the second condition. It said approval of the zone change shall be contingent upon approval of an acceptable conservation subdivision design. And we don't know that that conservation subdivision design has ever been accepted by the city. But from my understanding, a conservation subdivision design could accommodate 74 lots.
But these conditions go away if
If you don't recondition them.
If we don't recondition them.
Yes, ma'am, but if you'd like
Right.
to compare what it's zoned for today with the applicant's proposal, it's my understanding that they could put together a conservation subdivision design which would accommodate 74 lots.
If it's not a conservation subdivision, is it still 74 lots if it's just an R2?
And I can also tell you that one of these requirements is that it has to be a conservation subdivision.
Of the new, not of the new.
Not of the
zoning,
new, but of the
old.
previous.
But if those went away and it was stated R2, if those didn't exist and it was an R2, could they put in 74 homes?
No.
Let me chime in for just a second here.
Am I getting,
If I
everybody
understand your
confused?
question correctly, outside of it being a conservation subdivision, if it was strictly an R2, it would be based on the dwelling units per acre of the future land use category for that particular property. But given that it is an R2, excuse me, an R2 conservation subdivision, it cannot be developed until they meet the conditions that are with the property as it is right now.
Okay, all right. Anyone else have any questions for staff? I do. I have, because there was a pushback on condition number 7 as far as the road. So in this map that's up there now, can you show me the map that's up there now, the King Road, what the proposal is in condition number 7 and what that's gonna look like? Because he said he didn't understand what it was supposed to be, so.
Well, it says it must comply with all access standards. I don't know if DOT could better answer that. I'm not sure exactly what all of those would be.
Just show me how, if it's not gonna, that's gonna change. I don't know if that's gonna affect traffic there or not, but I just wanna see how that would change, David.
When I saw this come in, I was just looking at the odd skew that East King and West King have. And basically, my comments, first off, it started the city of Hampton's jurisdiction. It's up to the city what they want to do. But I just placed a comment from me to the planners is if Hampton's had any issues with that particular intersection angle, they may want to consider improvements to that to get it more. Typically, you want intersections close to 90 degrees. I would say that's more close to 45. But if they haven't had any issues, my guess is the city will probably waive that condition. But it's just a point to the city. If you've had intersection issues there, or if you've had issues with the intersection angle, this would be the time to improve it in conjunction with the neighborhood. So, but it basically, it would be possibly hooking this in. I think their entrance, and I think this site's previously been graded some from what I understand. It's basically across from existing East King now. So to line it up, you'd almost take East King and kind of extend it further to the east and bow it back, just so you can get it closer to being a 90-degree intersection on all quadrants instead of 45-degree existing and then having a 90 across from it, if that makes sense.
Okay, that's what I just needed to know where that was gonna be. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from board members to staff? Okay, Mr. Fretwell?
I think I've got a question about the original discussion that came up about the grading from the original development. Seemed to be that was even discussed by the current owner that was a problem. If that needs to be resolved and the original developer graded that incorrectly and stopped the water flow coming off of that other property, then that, like the road, should be taken care of at the same time that we do this, if we're gonna approve this.
No, it is not a civil matter, because if it's not the same developer that's developing this property, then the property owner that has the issue with how the property was graded several years ago will need to take that up legally with their representation versus whoever the developer was that graded the property incorrectly. But if the current developer decides that, and technically what they're grading doesn't look like it's going to encroach on that property, but if it does, then they could choose to regrade that, to redirect the water flow properly. Now, it's their choice, but it's not mandatory, because if it's not on their property that they're actually grading, then that's what they're responsible for only the property that they are working on.
No, I understand that, but it looks to me like from the map, what happened was they flattened out.
They being the current property owner, because we can't hold them liable for a previous mistake.
No, I understand that, but it looks like that, and I understand what you're saying, but it looks like a previous developer leveled that land to make a lot, damming the other person's property. And I get the civil lawsuit and everything. I'm just saying, like the streets, if that's going to be taken care of, that might be an amendment that we want to put in here to say that needs to be taken care of to solve the water flow problem, because you're stopping the water flow, stormwater, from taking its natural course. If that's going to be done, I would think it wouldn't want to be done willy-nilly, just between the developer and someone else, but that Henry County Stormwater would want to look at that and say...
You're getting into two tracts of land. The property that they are looking to develop has to submit grading plans that must be reviewed. and the grading plan addresses the boundaries of the property that they are actually developing. If they are to encroach into the subject property that has the drainage issue, then that would need to be addressed by the developer, but we cannot technically make them address erosion or sedimentation or runoff issue on a property that's not subject to what we're addressing tonight.
Even if it was graded improperly?
No, we
under
cannot,
the-
and that would be holding them liable for a mistake they did not make.
I think that would require some kind of written agreement between the developer and the property owner that's affected.
Correct. It will be something that the developer will have to enter into per their choice and the property owner, but we cannot make them do that because it's not subject to the property that we're addressing through the zoning procedures law. The tract of land that we're talking about is what is what's highlighted in green. That's what they have to submit plans for. That's what's going to be reviewed. That's what's going to be permitted. We cannot address another parcel unless it's part of this case tonight.
Understood.
Thank you, Mr. Fretwell. I have a question. And it's talking about the buffer. So isn't there a required buffer between, the property owners? And if there is, what's that buffer size?
There's not a required buffer.
Oh, there's not?
No, only if the uses were inconsistent. For example, if there's a commercial use next to the residential property.
So residential against residential, there's no buffer?
Right, no required one.
No required buffer?
Yes, ma'am.
But we could condition that buffer?
You could, if you so choose, a buffer or a privacy fence or whatever you may choose to condition.
Mr. Richards, do you have anything?
I was just going to point out that, that they're both single-family residential, so there's
sir.
no required buffer, but
Correct.
I think something was mentioned about a possible condition for a fence along that, common property line.
And you can condition that if you choose to.
A fence, above a fence or a vegetation for the buffer between the development and the homeowner that's on the corner. This one here. A vegetation buffer or a fence. That was brought up. I was just asking the question, if that's a requirement, and we'd have to condition it. Anyone else have any questions for staff? Okay, if we can go ahead and call the case.
RZ 1713H, Brent Holdings of Fayetteville, Georgia, requests a rezoning from R2 Urban Residential Conservation Subdivision to R2 Urban Residential and R3 High Density for property located at 46 West King Road in Land Lot 114 of the 3rd District. The property consists of 36.220 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a residential subdivision in the city of Hampton. The report was presented by Julie Yoder, Planner 1.
Do I have a motion for this case? Mr. Bailey?
Make a motion to approve RZ 17-13-8 with, help me keep count of these now, 9 additional conditions. Number 8 being the requirement of a homeowners association. See if I can get all this worded right. They'll provide permanent upkeep and maintenance of all the open spaces and recreational amenities within the project and detention ponds. And number 9 would be to provide a buffer between the property and the adjacent property owner, Mr. Landis.
Okay, I have a motion with current conditions, adding 2 additional conditions. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second by Mr. Peterson. Any discussion?
Could I add a couple of conditions?
You would have to get permission from the seconder to
Okay,
revise.
well, I request,
Okay,
I
the
request
seconder,
permission.
just a second. So, Mr. Peterson, you seconded the first motion. So, are you in agreement that motion can be amended?
You said 2 more, right? And those are the 2 that we discussed?
Right.
Okay. I'll I'll still second it and let it go.
So are you in agreement that, are you gonna remove your second so that a condition? No? Okay, so he's not going to, remove his second. So we gotta take a vote, because the seconder based it on the motion.
Be a vote.
That's right, so now we have to vote on that motion. Okay, so the motion's on the table, so you can vote on the motion. So the motion that's on the table is for the 7 original conditions plus the 2 additional conditions for approval. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate it by raising your hand. All those in opposition? Okay, the motion carried. Okay, thank you. I think that's all the cases. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, don't need a second. We're gone.